The conversation of UK grooming gangs has been an issue for quite some time now, but every single time anyone brings it up within that of the United Kingdom, they are maligned as nothing more than racist and told that they don't care about the plight of suffering immigrants. Meanwhile, the people levying these accusations at them are completely obfuscating the suffering of young girls that has been occurring within the United Kingdom for at a minimum of the past 30 years. Truly and utterly despicable. But what's even more despicable is the recent inquiry that was brought forward where we saw the British Parliament vote on whether there was going to be an investigation into this grooming gang kerfuffle, and what we saw was en masse 364 to 111 they voted against the inquiry itself.
The ayes to the right were 111, the noes to the left 364. So the noes have it, the noes have it. Unlock.
And there you have it. The United Kingdom's government voting en masse against the protection of sanctity and innocence of its young women. Absolutely and utterly despicable. I will try to speak within the language that YouTube will allow, but I will admit this boils my piss to a degree that we very well may be stepping beyond the bounds of what is allowed to be spoken on this platform, because, my God, the people going out of their way to make sure that there is not an investigation into something as horrific as this. Well, if we lived in a civil society, people such as this would be casting shadows from lampposts. Nonetheless, I digress. Here we see from the BBC, MPs vote against Tory call for new grooming gangs inquiry. An attempt by the Conservatives to have the government set up a national inquiry into grooming gangs has been voted down by 364 votes to 111, as I've already stated, with a margin of 253 votes. Utterly despicable and truly shocking, but the thing that isn't shocking is the nature of how it is that we've seen the recent framing around this conversation now that one Elon Musk is openly talking about this on Twitter. Here we see from the New Yorker, Elon Musk's latest terrifying foray into British politics. The world's richest man has become fixated on child exploitation in deindustrialized English towns, much of which took place more than a decade ago. Quite interesting that. Let's go ahead and pay attention to how it is that this is structured. Elon Musk's terrifying foray into British politics. You know what's actually terrifying? The feeling that so many of the young women within the United Kingdom must feel when they know they can't walk the streets alone at night because they're not safe, because they may very well be captured and preyed upon by a litany of different men that will very well be enroping them into these grooming gangs, which they are undoubtedly going to be sexually assaulted in the most horrific fashion that you could possibly imagine, in ways that, as was described from the investigations that have come forward, that I cannot even describe on this platform, or else I will be removed for how utterly despicable the actions taken upon these young girls were. It truly should show you the fact of how it is the corporate press wants to handle a conversation such as this, when their topic of focus isn't the fact of the tragedy of the predation of young women, but about the fact of how Elon Musk is just this terrifying figure that's now making a foray into British politics, and the fact that this is his focus. Well, my God, don't you understand that that makes him dangerous, rather than focusing on the danger that is brought to these young girls as they are preyed upon relentlessly? It is unfucking believable. Moving on now, here we see from the Times. Rape area councils brand Asian grooming gangs a racist term. Oxford, Newcastle, Greater Manchester, and Calderdale have adopted an Islamophobia definition produced by MPs that condemns stereotypes and tropes about Islam. That's right, if you're speaking about the fact that these grooming gangs, well, many of them are actually heralded by Pakistani men, then by all means that makes you simply a racist and an Islamophobe, because you don't want to actually have to have the conversation about how these poor immigrants are suffering because people are talking about how there are immigrants that are raping children. Are you serious? This is really the framing that's being taken? But of course it is, by that of nothing more than the liberal media. Going on now to the Telegraph, we see foreigners 3 times as likely to be arrested for sex offenses as British citizens. Crime League table puts Albanians at nationality as most likely to be arrested, followed by Afghans, Iraqis, Algerians, Moroccans, and Somalians. And the thing that I would love to go ahead and pay attention here specifically would be the fact of a topic that I've mentioned before, and it's that there are more Albanians in UK prisons than there are Albanians in Albanian jails, and that would be because of the fact of the flooding of their prisons outward to the rest of the world, and in doing so, many of them have fled to the shores of the UK. As we have seen, it has caused nothing more than chaos as sex offenses have skyrocketed. Now going on here to talking about the grooming gang specifically, Pakistanis up to 4 times more likely to be behind grooming gang, figures reveal. National Police Scheme shares data on a group-based child sexual abuse that includes ethnic background of the perpetrators. And this specifically, including the ethnic background of the perpetrators themselves, is exactly what so many within the media do not want to talk about, because then they could be framed as racist, you see. And that's exactly why so many within the UK government don't want to bring something like this to the forefront, because of the ethos of progressivism that has been so deeply entrenched within that of UK politics. We see that anyone bringing a conversation like this to the forefront, well, they simply must be racist. It couldn't be about the fact of the innocent women that they want to protect. No, that couldn't be the case. Now, speaking of those innocent women that aren't being protected, here we see from the BBC, a rape has been reported every hour in London. This is September 20th of 2024, and this is exactly what the poor women of the UK are having to deal with, because there are immigrants in mass throughout the country that simply do not share their culture. And I'm not saying this to malign immigrants that wish to go to a new land for a better life, to assimilate into the place that they are going to, so they can try and live to the standards of what it is the society they are going to is trying to strive for, but that's not what we're seeing in a place like the UK. Sadly, what we are seeing is the growth and proliferation of grooming gangs and the predation of young English women, as we see here from The Independent in 2019. Grooming epidemic as almost 19,000 children identified as sexual exploitation victims in England, and those are just the ones we know about, and this was written in 2019, which means you can only imagine that the number has shot up astronomically as we have only seen grooming gangs become more emboldened and more entrenched within that of everyday UK society in many of these smaller towns. And why is it that we've seen these men become more emboldened in their actions as they try and cast a wider net, ensnaring more and more young girls into their grasp? Well, there's a very, very simple answer for that. It was covered up. Here you can see from the Telegraph how the grooming gang scandal was covered up. The child victims of rape were denied justice and protection from the state to preserve an image of a successful multicultural society. That's right, because we have to keep up the facade that this is something that works. God forbid we actually do anything about the poor children that are being preyed upon. No, why would we ever do that? Because in the pursuit of making sure that we can create a progressive utopia, we have to make sure that we overlook the suffering of real individuals in real time in the hope that we can get to that hypothetical future down the line. Meanwhile, if these are the type of people that you see you are consistently bringing into your country, and with that, these are the individuals that will be the ones bringing forward that multicultural utopia, do you really believe it's going to be a utopia at all? No, of course not. And who is it that would possibly be covering up things such as this? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's in fact the police officers and government officials that are aware of these things. Here we see from Forbes, why did British police ignore Pakistani gangs abusing 1,400 Rotherham children? Political correctness is your answer, and that might sound a bit ridiculous, but my friend, I promise you it's not. Now we jump onto the Times. Rotherham police chief said, "We ignored sexual abuse of children because race fears stopped us from acting," the victim's father was told. A senior police officer admitted that his force ignored the sexual abuse of girls by Pakistani grooming gangs for, wait for it, decades, because it was afraid of increasing racial tensions, a watchdog has ruled. That's right. That's why these children are being preyed upon. And if you think that's a bit much, well, my friends, just imagine the fact of a story, something ridiculous, something that would, of course, obviously never happen. Like, two fathers, perhaps going on a pursuit to go save their children from these grooming gangs, and in the pursuit of trying to remove them from the clutches of these predators, the police then arrested them. This is from the Telegraph article that we saw that I had just showed how the grooming gang scandal was covered up. What we see here is, while fears over racial tensions and political correctness have left the state frequently unwilling to protect victims, the same concerns have seen attackers protected. As the J inquiry into Rotherham found in 2014, in at least 2 cases, fathers tracked down their daughters and attempted to remove them from the houses where they were being abused. The police then arrested the fathers. The article then goes on to detail other cases with other child victims where, in these instances, these children that were being preyed on, who were being drugged and given alcohol, well, they were then arrested by police for drunken and disorderly conduct, rather than the men themselves who were preying upon them, giving them drugs and alcohol. That's right. Quite fascinating that. And also we can create that multicultural utopia. And in the end, sacrifice the most innocent among us at the behest of doing so. Quite fascinating that. It appears human sacrifice hasn't left civil society much now, has it? For some reason, in some way, shape, or form, in every single society that has ever existed throughout all of human history, we have some form of human sacrifice, and by all means, offering up the most innocent among you to the barbarians that you allowed within the gate is undoubtedly a perfect example of exactly that. I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Stay lovely, stay great, and my God, most importantly, tell someone you love them. Peace out.